Well, hi, BookTube. Bill Ruttenberg here with the Ruttenberg Library. Want to come to you today with another book tag. Yes, three in a row, three book tags in a row. But wanted to kind of wrap up January with this specific book tag. It's called the Janstory Book Tag, and this was created just recently. Came out on Tuesday, just recently by Richard at History Lit. Great booktuber. Go check out his channel. I'll leave the link to that channel down in the comments below. He reads a lot of history. He reads a lot of history, so he's got a lot of background in it and really good in the ancient stuff and in the modern stuff. So really appreciate listening in on his stuff. And so he created this, and I think it was supposed to kind of coincide with our Historathon 2025 reading event, and so this is all kind of based around your January reading. And so let me go ahead and get started on this. So the first question on this tag is, what is the most recent history book that you have read? So I went back on my reading list and was going back, and I kind of scratched my head at first because I was trying to remember the last like true history book that I had read, because I've got a bunch of them I'm reading right now. I just haven't finished them, and I've been picking through them, throughout the month of January. And the last actual book that I read was The Eastern Front by Nick Lloyd, a book about World War I and all the fighting on the Eastern Front. But I don't have a physical copy here to show you. And so I kept going back until I found one that I had a physical copy of. So this was like one or two more books back. But this was Mr. Lincoln's T-Mails by Tom Wheeler, how Abraham Lincoln used the telegraph to win the Civil War. And this was a wonderful book, even though I did not finish this one in January, but it was the last history book that I finished that I have a physical copy of. But this is a good book. Really enjoyed it. Tom Wheeler is looking at, obviously, Abraham Lincoln's use of the telegraph and being able to send messages, and be able to communicate with his generals in in this time period. It would have been very, very fast communication, and which obviously would definitely change the strategies that you use in warfare, because you've got instant gratification for this time period. It's not exactly instant, but a whole lot quicker than it was. And so, being able to move troops and do, just different movements with your armies, it's totally a game changer. And I like how Tom Wheeler breaks this book down. He just gives us some, straight up facts about how communication changed, how it sped up, and how that, just affected history itself. But he also gives some facts in here. So just kind of going through real fast, by 1848, this had gradually expanded to over 2,000 miles of telegraph wire. The next 2 years saw mileage increase sixfold to over 12,000. By 1852, that amount had almost doubled, and at the time of Lincoln's 1860 inauguration, 17 years after Morse's first official message, estimated telegraph mileage exceeded 50,000 miles. And so he's got, some graphs and stuff showing, what he's talking about there. But definitely talking about the massive expansion of the telegraph and how that really affected the spread of the news. And so for the Civil War and Abraham Lincoln's purposes, he kind of breaks it down into three phases. And the first phase is, Lincoln, when he first uses the telegraph, and he really has no idea how to use it. And so it's a lot of trial and error at the beginning of his presidency, and his messages that are getting sent out are very, very spotty. They're not necessarily super detailed. It's one here, and then a few months later, another one there. But then when he starts getting the hang of using it and starts to kind of fully grasp how this could be used in his presidency for political stuff and for the war, we get to put in George McClellan as the commanding general, and of course Lincoln has all kinds of issues, and we start to see the second phase of his use of the telegraph come into play, and where his messages that he's sending out are a whole lot more frequent, a lot more detailed, a lot more just pointed. You're going to be doing this, and so that was kind of cool. And then he mixes this use of the telegraph with his leadership style of lead by walking around, and he talks a lot about that in the book. And then when Ulysses Grant takes over and Lincoln is finally comfortable with a general, we see that third phase enter in, where he backs off the telegram or the telegraph a little bit. It's his messages go from giving the directions of what you need to get done, because his generals weren't really doing it, to the point where in the third phase he's got Ulysses Grant who's doing it. So now he is just asking for the information, fill me in, what's going on. And so it's still a steady stream of telegraphs, but it's a different type of message that's going out. But anyway, he gives the argument that the telegraph totally changed how the war was fought and changed the leadership style of Abraham Lincoln. This is it's a pretty thin volume. It didn't take very long to read when I was in it. Now, I spaced it out over a long time because it was just a little bit here, a little bit there, but it's a pretty quick read. So, real good book. That's that is what I'm reading. And I actually, let me give you question number 2, because I just answered question number 2. So question number 1 was, what is the most recent book you've read, history book you've read? And so Mr. Lincoln's T-Mails. And then question number 2 was, what did you make of it? So I just, filled you in on that one. So I kind of jumped the gun. So I'll go ahead and just skip to question number 3. What's up next in your reading of history? And so the one that I am kind of focused on right now, I've got some other ones that I'm working through, but this is the one I'm focused on that I'm going to try to finish up here pretty soon. It's How the Great Pyramid Was Built by Craig B. Smith. This has been a pretty fun read. I don't know anything about the Egyptians for the most part. The ancient history it's not my cup of tea. So when I'm reading all these books for first quarter Historathon, this is all brand new stuff for me, and I'm learning quite a bit. And this one in particular is pretty interesting because the author is an engineer himself, and he has worked on really big projects, and so he made it kind of his mission to see how in the world, when he was looking at how do I get my big projects done, he starts thinking about the planning processes and putting the labor force and the resources, what all goes into that. So then he started looking at the pyramids, and he starts applying these same modern day concepts of how you would map out that whole plan for that. And he starts applying that to the ancient Egyptians. And so he has been looking at the labor force. He's been looking at, planning out a building of this size. What would you have to do to get those resources, the rock there, the stones there to build these pyramids? And just super fascinating, I think. And the author writes in a way that's even a simpleton like me can understand. And I have enjoyed that. Like this morning, he was going through, like when you plan out, like here's a chart he put in there, 3 phases of putting together these great pyramids, because it's not something that you do you do overnight. It's not something you do in a year. It takes several years to get it done. And then he was looking at, here's a construction logic diagram, and he's kind of mapping out the different jobs and who is whose boss. So then we had another chart in there, and so I've just really enjoyed this. And then he was talking about the building processes in here and the different pyramids that we see and the different angles, and just how big can you get these pyramids. Just real fascinating stuff. I just like it. And it was showing, here's some color photos in the middle, showing the insides of the pyramid where the actual tomb and the sarcophagus would go. And and I just didn't know about some of these other pyramids. And he talks about how the engineers, this was over the years in Egyptian history, this was like trial and error with these pyramids and figuring out, okay, this works, this doesn't work. So, if we're going to build bigger, then we can't do this because it'll collapse in on itself. And it was talking about this morning with those angles of the pyramid. If you do them too steep, it would end up imploding on itself because and it's getting into some science I don't understand, quite honestly, but just the weight and stuff of being able to hold up the structure. And so, there's a perfect angle to some of these pyramids for holding up all of that massive amount of weight. And then it got into talking about like the foundations, and you got to make sure you've got, the stuff underneath the pyramid is going to be able to hold up all that weight, the bedrock and everything. So it's just a really fascinating book. I'm really enjoying it, and am I halfway? I'm getting real close to being halfway through it, and it's just a matter of if I would focus on it, I could knock it out pretty quick. But I probably got it. I'm gonna check it. I've got it from the library, so I'm probably gonna check it out again. Well, I'm gonna have to because it's due on Saturday. But I'll probably get it for another 2 weeks and just continue to slowly go through it. But I like it because it's got, if you're like me and you don't know much about ancient Egypt, it's got lots of diagrams and pictures and stuff to help explain what they're talking about. So I'd recommend that one. I thought that was pretty good. Some other things that are up next in my history reading is I've been reading the Russian Revolution. I am real close to finishing this one. I've got, I think, 2 chapters left. And it's another one that if I would just focus, I could knock it out. And this one actually goes on, I was going to read this back in for the Red October event that they were doing on Russian history, and I just didn't get to it. And it's actually been on my TBR list for 4 years now, I think, something like that. This is one of my longer ones on my TBR. So this one will count with my TBR elimination challenge. So excited about that. But I really like how Sheila Fitzpatrick goes through the Russian Revolution and is breaking this down into short segments. Because I'll be honest, you can get bogged down in pretty quickly. It's not always the most entertaining stuff if you're not super familiar with the history, which I am not. And so it's easy to get bogged down in it. And so she's broke it up into like 3, 4, 5 page little segments. And so you can just read a little bit, then put it down, read a little bit, put it down. I like that. That helps me get through it. But again, got to come back to it. Just got 2 more chapters left. I should get at least 1 chapter done this weekend, and then we'll be real close to knocking it out. Another one that I checked out at the library, you guys see all the books behind me. I don't need to check out books from the library, but when I see them and it sparks an interest, I'm kind of like, oh, gotta have it. So another one that I grabbed at the library, my daughter had a sewing class at the library, so I was there for like 3 hours. So I read for some of it, but then I walked around and was looking at the shelves, and I was looking for books for first quarter Historathon, something that maybe something I'd want to read. And so I saw SPQR, and I started reading this, and it is a pretty good book. I did not get very far just because I was focusing more on that pyramid book. I'm just in this, again, ready to start the 2nd chapter, but she's been focusing on Cicero and, what's the other guy's name? Is it Catiline? Is that how you say it? But she's been focusing on that rivalry between the two in the first chapter, and it was interesting. I honestly don't know anything about Russian history, or not Russian history, Roman history, excuse me. I don't know much about Roman history either. It's, again, ancient stuff. So I'm going to be learning a lot and probably scratching my head a lot because I got to connect dots to make it make sense for me. Because, like I said, I don't have a big background in that. So there's one. Another one I've been picking through that I need to kind of step up my game and get going on is All the Powers of the Earth by Sidney Blumenthal. Third volume in his biography of Abraham Lincoln. It's really good, focusing on the years 1856 to 1860. It's been really hitting on the Kansas-Nebraska stuff and whether they allow slavery into the territories or not. That's been the focus early on. And here's another one I've been reading on is Shelby Foote's, and I don't have the dust jacket on right now, but Shelby Foote's third volume of his Civil War history. And this has been really good. It's been talking about Sherman's march through Georgia. That's been a focus on the book. And then also Grant at Petersburg, right? I think. Anyway, so that's been good. And just because I like talking about my books, let me show you the next 3 histories for Historathon that I have started, and I kind of dipped into them just a little bit one night. I did a few pages or one section in one book, and then I put it down, went to the section of the next one, just trying to get a taste for them to see if I'm going to like them. And and these are 3 of them that I plan on finishing, or I'm hoping I will finish before the end of March. And this is Eric Klein's 1177 BC, the year civilization collapsed. And like I said, I'm not very far in, as you can see. I'm not very far into that one. Matter of fact, it was just the introduction that I read, and so or the preface, so I got to get into the prologue next. But that's one. And then Out of One, Many Ancient Greek Ways of Thought and Culture. And this is the one, did I even get this one started? I may not have. Yeah, I was like literally just a couple pages into this one. So I can't tell you anything about it. That's one I'm going to get going. And then Birthing Romans, Childbearing and Its Risks in the Imperial Rome. So those are my history books that I plan on working on over the next 3 months. Next 2 months. So that leads me into question number 4, which is, do you have a master plan for this year? And Richard had mentioned in his video that he's been really following with Historathon 2025 because, it's an awesome reading event. It's bringing in history lovers from literally all over the world, which is absolutely awesome. And so we're getting all these different book recommendations flying in from all these different countries around the world. And Historathon 2025 breaks the year up into quarter segments. So the first quarter, which is January through March, is prehistory to 500 AD. And the second quarter from April through June is 500 to 1500. And then third quarter, which is July, August, and September, is 1500 to 1820. And then the last 3 months of the year is 1820 to the present. And so it's a nice breakup of the timeline. You got free choice within the time frame. And with all these book recommendations, you can't go wrong. You're going to find something to read. So, when I look at this, do you have a master plan for this year? That is kind of the master plan. I agree with Richard on that. I've been using that to try to help guide my reading. Now, like I said, ancient history, it's interesting, but it's not my cup of tea. So I do have some history books that are being, kind of filled in there to help me with the stuff I really do like, if that makes sense. And then of course there's reading events throughout the year that aren't even that might not even be history related. There's a lot of fiction reading throughout the year that I do. So The last question in the tag, and then I'll wrap this up, is do you have a vague plan for the next 5 years? Honestly, I don't. I hope that our Historathon 2025 continues, because that'll, if it does, that will continue to help me, plan out my reading throughout the year. But I know I've got a couple shelves worth of Lincoln books downstairs I'd really love to get through. For the next, in these next 5 years, I want to go back to my old TBR lists and knock off all the books. I've got lots of reading events. I've got lots and lots of books right here in my own shelves that I need to get read. And that's kind of my reading plan. I don't know if I have an order. I am a mood reader. And so if I want to, knock titles off the list, I need to be able to, maneuver back and forth according to my moods that I'm reading in. Because if I make just a strict list of the order of the books I'm going to read, then I'm never going to get anything done, just because of being a mood reader. And I know there's a lot of people out there that are like that. And it's also the reason that I a lot of times have more than 10 books going all at one time. And because, I kind of pick and choose as I go, depending on how I feel. So it's just how I am. But yeah, that is my take on the Janstory Book Tag, again created by Richard over at History Lit. Go check out his channel. He's got some wonderful history stuff over there. And thank you for creating this, Richard. And I hope you enjoyed it. So until next time, BookTube, happy reading.